Joining us now, Ben Tribbett. Follow him on Twitter, @NotLarrySabato. Ben Tribbett, one of the keenest political consultant minds in America. He's got a national firm, coveted political consultant all over the country, and but his roots are here in Virginia. He follows it very closely. Hey, Ben, great to have you.
Hey, good morning, John.
Sorry about your caps.
Yeah, let's not talk about that again.
Okay. But I am sorry about him. Okay, so let's get off that. But who's going to win the Stanley Cup?
I still like the Sharks to win the Stanley Cup, but they gotta get through 2 more games now in the West.
They're down 3-2, so they have to win those 2. I like the Blues to win the whole thing. Besides, I think the last time they won a Stanley Cup was like 1948 or something. So I think they're everybody's sentimental favorite. Plus, they've been screwed twice with bad calls. So we'll see how it goes. Ben, let's get to politics, Virginia. And let's start with this complete debacle in the 97th district. That's the New Kent, Hanover, Chris Peace, Wyatt. I mean, first it's a convention, then it's a primary, then it's a debate, then it's a fight. Now we don't know what it is. Is there a primary? Is there not a primary? Now there's a dueling, people going to the Board of Elections. I mean, what the hell's the deal here?
Yeah, this is a weird little thing in Virginia law. I've actually been a legislative chair in the past for Democrats in districts where I've lived in. And one of the things that happens, and this is, I think, unique to Virginia, because we have this primary and convention system where the parties can really select anything they want in an individual district. The way the process works is there's, in the party bylaws for both parties, a method of selecting a legislative chair for each district. And that method is generally based on what counties are in it, what percentage of the vote those counties represent, and those county chairs or units will participate in figuring out who's going to be the legislative chair for that district. Once that happens in January, when no one is paying attention to any of this, those names are submitted to the Board of Elections. And once those names are submitted to the Board of Elections, that person is responsible for certifying to the board a number of different things. Firstly, whether the parties will be having a primary or not, and that's by a certain deadline. And then secondly, who the nominee of the party is should there not be a primary. The other thing that those chairs are responsible for, by the way, is collecting the petitions and filings for people if there is a primary. And again, this is very unusual to anywhere else in the country. Usually if you file for an election, you walk into your local Board of Elections office and you file your paperwork to run for an office. In Virginia, if you're running for a partisan office, you go to someone's home, sometimes a coffee shop, and you have to find your legislative chair and turn in things to them in a private place, and then they submit your name in the order in which you filed. So Virginia has this very weird system. Now, all of this is a long explanation into what's going on in the 97th district. Essentially, is the chair that the Republicans named for that district, who's responsible for telling the Board of Elections who the Republican nominee is, and the Board of Elections doesn't have any way to verify or not know whether these things are true or not true when it's submitted to them. They have to assume it's correct. Mm-hmm. Is supporting Scott Wyatt and decided to push forward with this convention, even though majority of his legislative committee wanted to change the method of nomination. And so essentially they've got Chris Peace over a barrel here because the only paperwork the State Board of Elections has received, and it is from the official chair that was certified as the chair, says Scott Wyatt is now the Republican nominee. This has been something people have seen coming for a long time, for a lot of years, of the way the Virginia system is set up. It's rife for someone to take advantage of it as the legislative chair and do what they want to do. So, John, I think this will end up being resolved with Scott Wyatt being the Republican nominee.
So there's two schools of thought here. One said it's going to get resolved by the first district committee, and they had a vote last night, and it was 17-5 to uphold Wyatt. I've got the Republican Party of Virginia, which has claimed that it's the convention didn't exist, that it was not a sanctioned state convention, and they're not recognizing it. And Jack Wilson, the chairman, is saying it's going to go to the full, what do you call it, a Republican State Central Committee and get resolved there. So it's still not resolved. There's supposed to be a primary June 1st, but I guess now that's in limbo. And so is there any recourse here for Peace, Chris Peace, in your mind?
I think if he was able to resolve it within the party where the party could uncertify the legislative chair in some way, then perhaps. I think what's going to have to happen is the party is going to end up sending in a second certification to the State Board of Elections. The Board of Elections is going to let stand the one from the named party legislative chair that they received. That's how the process works. And then Peace will have to sue in court to say that the Republican Party of Virginia had the authority to overrule this chair and that the State Board of Elections was in error to accept their filing. And we'll see how that works out with a judge. But from a State Board of Elections perspective, you have 200 of these. You have 100 in the House of Delegates alone. You have 100 Democratic, 100 Republican legislative chairs, and they rely on the information they receive from those people being accurate. Now, John, I've seen all sorts of problems with this in the past. A particular incumbent legislator, for example, might have their own legislative aide be the legislative chair. And so if you want to challenge them, you have to go to the home of the person who works for the incumbent. That person is going to be the one to check your paperwork, to check your signatures, to see if you qualified or not. There's been a number of situations where people turn in information to their chairs, and the chairs determine they didn't qualify, and they never turn their name over to the State Board of Elections. So it's a system that's rife with that. And again, in every other state, you just walk into your Board of Elections if you want to file for office, and that's where you file. And maybe this will cause the General Assembly to finally clean this up.
I really hope so, because it's a mess and it's an embarrassment. And just because it's happening on the Republican side, it could happen on the Democratic side. But the whole thing's a joke. And I think it's a stain for Republicans, and it's the same cabal of conventioneers trying to rig stuff that's been going on forever. Finally it's gotten to a high-profile situation. One more question. I'm going to move to Fairfax, Ben. And my next question is, because Peace never really ran, if he's denied the opportunity to run a primary or go into or be the nominee, can he run and file as an independent?
Well, Virginia has the sore losers law. I think the sore losers law, though, only applies to a state-run primary.
Right.
So I think you could lose any other method of party nomination and still run as an independent. The deadline to file as an independent is June 11th at 7 p.m. The reason they make that the deadline is that it's primary day. And they don't want people to be able to see the results on primary night and be able to change their plans based on the results. So that's the last time to file as an independent. I'm not sure that Peace, in his dispute with this, will have it resolved in time with the courts that he would have time to file as an independent if he loses. And I don't think that he's going to waive his opportunity to try to become the Republican nominee by waging a court challenge here. So my guess is at the end of the day here is that Chris Peace is probably out of office because of the way this is set up. But it very much is a broken system.
Well, I think you should go file as an independent. And then you have an election. And then he's either going to win or lose, and he's on the ballot. They know him. He doesn't have to have the line. Wyatt's got the R line. There's a Democrat in the race, and trying to take advantage of the mess, which is a smart move. And I think Peace should run. Look, Joe Morrissey did this in 2015. The Democrats threw him off the ballot. He was an incumbent, as you know, House of Delegates member. They didn't like what went on with Myrna. They threw his now wife. They threw him off the ballot. Put him. He was serving time in jail. We backed him. I interviewed him from jail, and he ended up filing as an independent and winning in a landslide. So, people don't like shenanigans. We'll see how it plays out. I want to get to Fairfax. Ben? I I don't really follow it, but every time I open up any series of emails, there's a lot going on in Fairfax. Give us an update.
Well, tonight's actually the Democratic Committee endorsements for school board. And one of the things that is weird about Fairfax County is the Democrats never wanted to make endorsements for school board originally when this first became elected. The Republicans actually tried to take over the school board and made the first set of endorsements, and the Democrats only did it in response. That election ended up with a Democratic majority that's never been broken. So in the history of the school board, it's always been Democratic controlled. And as the years have gone on and Fairfax has become bluer and bluer, essentially a party endorsement now is almost tantamount to election in most districts and for the at-large seat. The process has gotten completely insane. There's 4 candidates for 3 at-large seats. Thousands of people signed up to join the county committee because the committee voted to not allow a caucus where voters could participate in the endorsement process. Instead, they kept it closed to committee members only. That caused thousands of people who weren't actually interested in joining the Democratic committee to all simultaneously join and ask for waivers of their filing fees. So they don't even appear to be actually interested in being members of the committee other than for purposes of voting. It's thrown basically the committee into total chaos. Then there's all these allegations because no one knows these new people signing up of voter fraud, and people there were 7 different days of voting, and there's rumors that some people are coming back casting votes under false names. And so then the committee instituted a photo ID for voting amongst their own committee members, which, as you know, is something the Democrats have fought very hard against in Virginia, the idea of having photo ID. And the alternative to photo ID being that your picture will be taken when you check in. Now, can you imagine if the Republicans were taking people's photos when they wanted to vote? The absolute meltdown that would occur across the state. Mm-hmm. And now you have the largest Democratic committee in the state of Virginia taking photographs, and it's like, what in the world is going on here?
How do you explain it?
I mean, it's just bad decision after bad decision that keeps getting compounded on itself, and people trying to resolve their former bad decisions with more bad decisions. But I mean, John, look, I'm a democracy advocate. First of all, the election should be open to the public.
Right.
Second of all, I've been an advocate against voter ID in Virginia for a long time because it's discriminatory. But the idea of taking people's photos when they vote is really even worse. I mean, it's so coercive, and it really undermines the Democrats' ability to fight real voter suppression efforts in the state when they are using voter suppression efforts in their own elections. And so I had to tell you, as someone who's involved up here, the whole thing has been so incredibly disappointing to watch, and has left, I think, the party and committee pretty much very divided.
Power corrupts ultimately. That's what you've got. There's no Republicans there, but a handful. And so the Democrats are in control of everything. And so now they want to control their fiefdom. And so they're going to use whatever means for the powers to be to do what they need to do. That's just one more example of it. But I'm glad you brought that up because we have 2 examples now, one on the Democratic side and one on the Republican side. Both are a mess. It's all about little individual battles, fiefdoms, and rigging stuff because they can. As long as you allow this stuff to get rigged, like I always say, Ben, riggers will rig. I mean, you got rigging going on in Fairfax, and you got rigging going on in the 97th. Riggers will rig, give them the opportunity. That's what they're going to do in order to assume power or assume authority. And the beat goes on. All right, 2 other issues we got to get to. A big Democratic primary, closest one, District 16, Morrissey Dance. Dance agrees to debate Joe Morrissey. A lot of people still have her as the favorite. I think Joe wins. But they only will debate him with a Democrat Party of Virginia official moderating it. No media. Media certainly is invited, I would assume, but they can be involved in the debate. Morrissey chafing at the idea. I've said publicly on the air that Joe should go forward with the debate regardless of who the moderator is. But why not just have somebody independent from the media moderate it? Why have somebody from the Democratic Party of Virginia?
I mean, in primary debates, it's not unusual to have a person from the party moderate, because unless it's a high-profile primary, generally members of the media aren't even interested in moderating debates that are in contested nominations. That having been said, I think if you have interest in that, that's a perfectly fine way to go. Look, the debate about debates is something that happens in every campaign. And, you know, in a situation like this, it's very telling to what the end result will be. The candidate who's behind will want to have debate and will be the one who will compromise in this situation. The candidate who's ahead is unlikely to compromise. They're likely to set out the terms in which they're willing to debate, and that's it. And so, to me, part of the interesting part of watching this play out has been if there is going to be a debate and who's going to give in. And if you see neither side give in and there ends up not being a debate, it tells you that both sides think they're going to win. So, you know, it's very telling to watch. And, you know, I think we'll probably know more this week of where the campaigns really do believe that they stand.
Why not let Ben Tribbett be the moderator?
I'd be happy to moderate them, but I think Susan Swecker would be a great moderator.
So
I don't
do
think
I.
That's a bad suggestion at all.
Yeah, that was
that
my suggestion. Look, Susan Swecker, it doesn't matter if you agree with her politically or not. Ideologically, she's fair, she's tough. And this is what I told the Morrissey people on the air when I had them on the other day, and they were complaining about the format. I'm like, look, Susan Swecker is not going to bar media. She's just not. So if she's in control of the debate, here's what you can absolutely be guaranteed: you'll have equal time, it'll be fair, and the media will be there. And if the debate gets rigged for Ra's dance, every media person, that's what they're going to say, and that plays into Joe's narrative, which is the establishment is trying to pick the candidates. So why would they do that? It's going to be a debate. Have at it, and I think it'll be interesting. And I think they owe it to the constituents there. I tell you the other interesting thing. I had Barbara Comstock on my show the other day, and at the end, out of the blue.
Oh, it was epic. I listened to that. It was epic.
Out of the blue, like came from nowhere. And of course, she knows me, and she knows I'm backing Joe. And she just launches into this anti-Morrissey tirade. And really, I have to say, Ben, there are few things that happen on the air where it catches me, like takes me aback. That caught me by surprise. I couldn't believe it because I didn't expect it under any circumstances. And it came at the end when she knew this. She's good. She knew we were running out of time. She knew the clock was ticking. I had to get to the news. And it was epic. And she was really, and full-throated, blasted Morrissey and basically endorsed dance. What did you think of that?
Well, I mean, first of all, obviously, an endorsement from Barbara Comstock is not something that's well sought after in Democratic primaries. So I'm not sure like how Roz Dance felt about that when she heard it. I'm sure she probably was a little perplexed. Although it's always nice if anyone says anything nice about you, right?
Yes.
But wow, I don't think anyone saw that happening. Look, I don't know if you saw on, you know, I know we're both big fans, John, of Virginia political memes.
Yes.
But I think he might have had one of the funniest things he's ever put up yesterday when he posted the picture of Joe Morrissey on the Iron Throne with a prediction of how the year would end. Because the reality is that if Joe is successful in this primary, there's a very good chance the Senate could be 2020 with Justin Fairfax presiding and Joe Morrissey as one of the 20 members. And, I mean, you want to talk about a circus for the new majority leader, Dick Saslaw, to have to manage. I don't know if you can set up a greater circus atmosphere than having if Saslaw has to clear everything between Morrissey and Fairfax to be able to move anything in any bill. I mean, it is really just it's a hilarious situation, but we'll see how it all plays out.
If Morrissey wins, here's the grand irony of this. If Joe wins, and I think he is, and the Senate is tied 2020, which I think, if I had to bet now, is probably the most likely gambling scenario because I think they lose. The Republicans cannot win Dick Black's seat, and I think they got a shot to hold everything else, including Sturtevant. So if it's 2020, Joe Morrissey in one day goes from ostracized, kicked out, humiliated, put him in a closet, ban him from doing a show in the General Assembly. In one day, he becomes the most powerful man in Virginia. In one day. There can't be a better irony of that in life from what he's been through.
Well,
I mean,
I think even funnier though, John, is like, remember that Morrissey, if they court him and are able to finally successfully get him on something, then they have to go through Justin Fairfax. So that Morrissey only gets you to even potentially, and you got to go through Fairfax. And then you got to deal with Justin Fairfax.
And this is the other twist in this, Ben. Let me tell you the other twist. Morrissey is the only Democrat who has unabashedly defended Fairfax from day one. The only one. He has defended him and said that he shouldn't resign, that he should have due process, that there's been no charges, that if he was his attorney, that he would beat all this stuff. I mean, Morrissey has been full-throatedly defended Fairfax's right to stay in that job. And he's the only Democrat who's done that in Virginia. And then he would be the swing vote on any piece of legislation, and he would be the guy to deal with Fairfax, and he's the only guy that backed him. I mean, it almost makes your head explode to think about it.
Yeah, it's a situation that Virginia Democrats find themselves in for sure.
Any upsets anywhere on the horizon?
In the primaries?
Yeah.
I don't see any major upsets happening. We just had a huge upset in Prince William County for the board chair where a guy who ran to Corey Stewart's right upended the establishment in Prince William County and made it likely the Democrats could take over the board there. But I don't see any upsets in the primaries. I will just say this to close, John. It's much harder to pull a political upset in a primary where you actually have to get votes versus just being able to rig the process. It's a lot easier if you want to knock somebody out just to rig it than to actually get people to vote for you. And I think that's what you're seeing.
That's certainly what we're seeing in the 97. Scott Wyatt could have never, ever beaten Delegate Peace in a primary. He would have gotten beat 70-30. So they rigged the nominating convention, and you're seeing the same thing in Fairfax. As we say, Ben, riggers will rig because they can. Ben, thanks for being with us. We're out of time. John Fredericks Radio Network.